Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we'll be continuing our 5 years later series as it's almost coming to an end. Don't worry, that doesn't mean that the series is completely ending, as we have a 4 years later series for the races of Total War Warhammer 2. Yep, that game has been out for 4 years and there have been drastic changes. But let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Today we'll be talking about a faction very near and dear to my heart, Bretonnia. You see, Bretonnia was released as a FLC race pack. As of the time of recording this video, no other race has been given to the player base completely for free. You don't have to pay a single penny, and what you had access to is a number of lords and a completely unique race known as Bretonnia. A land of chivalry, knights, and, well, not a really good faction because you're missing out on quite a lot of things, but that's how Bretonnia was on the tabletop, and that's how Bretonnia is represented here. The Bretonnian roster itself is mostly centered around peasantry, knights on horses, and well, magic. Let's be honest about that. It's pretty standard. There are a lot of different foot troops, but they're peasantry. They're pretty weak. You've got some archers which are pretty good, but the main thing with Bretonnia is the focus on knights. This is how they were in the tabletop, and this is how they'll always be. Keep in mind, however, that this was inspired by the 6th edition army book, as Bretonnia itself never really got updated to 7th or 8th. Horses are pretty decent, but they were good in, say, 8th edition, and they weren't pretty good now in Total War Warhammer. The good thing is, however, that we do have a cavalry beta at the moment at the time of recording this video, so if you're watching this long after, we will by that point at least have some balancing on the live patches. It's always been speculated by the community that the reason why Bretonnia was an FLC race is because there's not much to them. In fact, they do even have some units, like for example the Hippogriff Knights, which were never part of the tabletop. The faction itself is mostly just reskinned units. It's really how it is. If you look at all the individual knights, it's just changing the weapon and yeah, some stat changes, but nothing really changes too much. That's not to say that it's not a fun race to play. In fact, I've been enjoying the Bretonnian campaign quite a bit. I love them on the tabletop and I enjoy them here too. 3 different legendary lords were available from the very start upon their release. The great thing about this faction is Bretonnia was split into its 3 individual dukedoms, meaning that you had 3 different start positions, so you could co-op right from the beginning if you wanted to as 2 different Bretonnian players. The first legendary lord is of course Leon Leonker, the current king of Bretonnia, and he starts in the very far north of the nation. Keep in mind that Bretonnian playstyle does not change drastically throughout all the different legendary lords, which, yeah, might not sound interesting, but then again, like I said, very old race, which never really got fleshed out too much. The second character is Alberic de Bordelot, which can be found in Bordelot, as you can imagine, and he is in the center of Bretonnia. The great thing is that you have all these different start positions, which yes, are featured in Bretonnia, but are spread apart. There's nothing too special to say about this character. He's supposed to be seafaring, but we don't really have any incentive for seafaring stuff, and it really took a while before he finally got his trident. Yep, that's pretty much what people wanted. And the third and final lord is the Fey Enchantress, a spellcaster character so drastically different to Alberic and Leon. She starts the game in the southernmost tip of Bretonnia, linking up to Astalia and Athaloran, meaning that you have a variety of different enemies at the very start, so you'll at least not be so bored. Alberic, unfortunately, even when it comes to the Mortal Empires, is stuck between loads of different allies. Leon Leonker can of course fight the Empire, move up to Norska as the AI commonly does, and she can move down south. Variety is of course very important, especially for a Total War game. Now before we move on, just a quick note. Throughout the 2 games currently released on the Warhammer series, Bretonnia is rather small. It is not represented as it should be in lore, where a lot of dukedoms have been mashed together into one province and so on. It's a bit weird, as there should be some more settlements. Bretonnia is indeed rather small, and it doesn't take a long time to unite it, whether you're talking about Warhammer 1, where it's a little harder, or Warhammer 2, where the rework made it a lot easier. A few more settlements here and there would have been nice, and maybe split up a few of the provinces. Some of them have enough space. It will be kind of squished up. Hopefully in Warhammer 3 we see something different, but I'm not going to speculate here, as I very much doubt it. Bretonnian buildings haven't really changed throughout the series. Everything is pretty much of a standard Total War faction in that sense. The only difference here is that obviously industry and peasantry is its own separate thing whilst also still being the same in a certain way. Whereas if you want to expand, say, farming or industry, you need to build up another building alongside it, so it will take a lot of your slots, which can get a little bit annoying because that does take away a lot of valuable slots. Remember, like I said, the Bretonnian provinces are rather small, so you won't actually have a lot of buildings. Peasant economy is a unique mechanic only available to the Bretonnians, where you basically... Well, I can't spin this in a good way. It was more of a clutch than anything, as it kind of limited as how quickly you could build some armies if you wanted to have loads of archers, peasantry and so on, which are of course the lower tier units at the very beginning, and yeah, you could have to build to a certain point, or you could pass it but start taking some negatives. This was also tied directly to your agriculture buildings, which, it became a bit of a problem. Early on, Bretonnians would not be able to field large armies, and yeah, it was a clutch at the very beginning. The technology tree for Bretonnia was, well, one of the worst ones, I must admit. Extremely small, with no real sense of direction. You had a bunch of them that focused around economy, which was great, but not a lot of buffs towards building up your troops. Instead, you did have some buffs against enemies, but that was pretty much it. Or, of course, building up your relations with the other Bretonnian dukedoms. This would make it much easier for you to confederate with them at the very beginning, but even then, confederation with, say for example, Artois or something, was not as easy as it is in Warhammer 2 now. Bretonnian factions at the beginning of their respective campaigns in Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2 will also have an event that will trigger as soon as you go into your second turn. Sometimes it can bug out and go on to your third turn, where you will have greenskin incursions happening for a certain amount of time, and the way to stop this is to destroy a greenskin settlement within Bretonnia. Now, this does work well because really, you don't want to kill off the greenskins. In fact, if you didn't and you just let the rebellion army spawn constantly as you carried on throughout your turns, well, you could just power level up some characters, which was obviously very beneficial, and yeah, pretty easy because it's a low tier rebellion. It really causes no issues. You can literally wait for them to spawn. I mean, it's just free experience. Bretonnians in Warhammer 1 had a vow system which was pretty much just skill points. Yeah, just skill points. You did greatly reduce the upkeep of certain units, and it was beneficial for you for the higher tier knights, but the system itself was very flawed because that's free skill points, and levels were very limited throughout the Warhammer series. So yeah, that's free skill points less, which could have gone towards buffing up your troops, getting some administration stuff, or even just making your lord a little bit stronger. Bretonnia's biggest flaw in Warhammer 1 has to be Confederation. As I stated before, you could get some relations with them through technology, which would increase it quite drastically, by 100 I believe. But it was quite slow as you had to go by the conventional methods of Confederation, which we know from many different Total War games, and that means building up your relations, not only that, but being more powerful and so on, which, yeah, made the campaign slow. The fact is, Bretonnia, you'd want to unite it as fast as possible, and you were probably better off just declaring war on the other dukedoms. It made it quite tedious. There's allies everywhere and not enough enemies. Thankfully, this was changed for Warhammer 2, and we'll discuss that in a little bit, but Warhammer 1, yep, slow. Chivalry is a resource, again, exclusive to Bretonnia, where you would gain chivalry by, say, winning battles or building certain buildings, completing quests and so on, but you would lose chivalry if, say, for example, you lost a battle, you retreated, you went into ambush stance, you raided, you sacked a settlement, which means that Bretonnia was pretty much at a loss. You would lose a lot of different mechanics and functions that were available to most factions. To balance this out, however, the more chivalry you had, the more bonuses you would unlock, which were pretty good. You know, you'd get some decent ones like extra experience per turn, extra Lord Recruit rank, more leadership, and being able to summon the Green Knight, though I wouldn't say the Green Knight is too special, to be honest. The Green Knight was introduced as possibly the first legendary hero of the series, though he only has a limited amount of summons and it was based on your chivalry rank too. That being said, it's a character which is only around for a certain amount of turns, and I'm not sure if that's just me, but more often than not, I do forget that the Green Knight even exists. He's still more or less tied in the same mechanic, and really it shouldn't be the same thing. The Green Knight should just appear when you're at a loss, because that's what his lore was always like. He would appear in Bretonnia's hour of need. But now we move on to Warhammer 2, and of course Bretonnia has received a rework which did help them out drastically, and a new legendary lord was also available, Repens de Lyonesse. As I said earlier in the video, Bretonnia has pretty much almost been fully completed, as, well, there wasn't really much to go about for them, but at least we did get another legendary lord completely for free once again, who is available in both the Eye of the Vortex and the Mortal Empires campaign. Repens is an interesting character as, well, she shouldn't really be alive at this point in the timeline. She's been dead for a long time. Mind you, she was never confirmed dead, but Grail Knights don't tend to live this long. Rather than starting in her lore-friendly start position of Lyonesse, which again would make no sense because there is a current Duke of Lyonesse, she then starts in the lands of Araby, crusading around the territories and fighting against the Tomb Kings, because as of now, recording this video, we still do not have Araby. As I said before, she's in both campaigns of Warhammer 2, meaning that you do have some variety, even though she more or less starts in the same area, but it's different from the other Bretonnian playthroughs, so you do have some replayability here. The Green Knight has been changed ever so slightly, where he can be called a infinite amount of times by the end of your chivalry bar, but again, I keep forgetting he exists, so yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Bretonnia's technology tab has now been drastically changed. It's very much the same format, but increased massively. There's a lot more new techs focusing around building up your forces, so it's not all just relations and, of course, infrastructure, so now you can boost up your armies more and more. A lot more techs have been included to give you buffs against certain other races, as yes, Warhammer 2 did introduce a lot of other races too, and the way that you confederate with other factions of Bretonnia is much easier now, and just more user-friendly. Now, when you finish researching any of the text relating to a specific Bretonnian dukedom, you'll have a pop-up, and it will give you the option. You can demand fealty, which will cost you chivalry and instantly confederate. You can appease the lords, which will cost you treasury, and once again instantly confederate or do nothing, which generally does not happen often because you want to confederate. It's really easy to unite Bretonnia now. It will only take around 40 turns or so if you're focusing specifically on that branch. Keep in mind that there are some possible negatives, as when you do confederate, you get everything they have, meaning that your peasant economy can skyrocket into the negative. It's just something that happens as the AI does like spawning armies of peasants rather than knights. I'm not too sure why this happens, but it's very early game and you won't have to worry too much about disbanding armies. Now keep in mind that you will spread out very quickly, and sometimes it doesn't really help to just focus on expansion, as Bretonnia does have a bit of issue where money is good, but you're so scrunched up that expanding all the time is just going to cause more problems. Instead, you could wait a little bit and let the enemy build up the settlements, get them to tier 3 and so on, and then confederate. But then again, it's completely up to your playstyle. The vow system was also quite heavily changed. Rather than it being focused around skill points, it's an individual questline for each of your lords, meaning that each of your lords will have to do a certain amount of prerequisites to be able to get to the next vow. Some people like it, some people don't. I think it's incredibly lore-friendly and fits with the theme of Bretonnia heavily when it comes to this, where they'll have to do their Knight's Vow, their Questing Vow, and then later the Grail Vow. It might slow down the pace of your campaign, but eventually some characters will already skip a Knight's Vow and even Questing Vow, so it's pretty good, and you will enjoy it because it will give you more reason of progression. It's not like the majority of lords for other races and factions where there's literally nothing special about them. They don't have any prerequisites like this. And lastly, peasant economy was rebalanced a little bit to make it more beneficial for you to have more peasant units. It's nothing too special, but then again, keep in mind that you'll mostly be using archer armies here anyway, as you have, 3 different types of archer units: standard, poison, and fire, and yeah, there's an archer meta in Total War. The faction of Bretonnia as a whole is in a very good place throughout the series. Yeah, they're missing a bunch of legendary characters, a lot of dukes and so on, but that will turn Bretonnia into pretty much the Lustria Ball. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of space. However, it has been hinted in the past that Creative Assembly might carry on looking at Bretonnia, adding in some well-known, famous missing units, and possibly a legendary character, so here's hoping that we might get some more, as, yeah, they don't have a lot of stuff coming, but who knows, with the release of the eventual Warhammer The Old World, which was the revival of Warhammer Fantasy, they might get some new stuff which could really help Bretonnia here in Total War. I would personally love to see more dukes. I have pretty much every single released duke on the tabletop, and it would be nice to be able to play as them. Of course, mods do that very, very well, but I know that some people prefer vanilla over mods, so the more characters the better. It would be cool if we could get the brigand characters and brigand units too, as right now the most focus is peasants and knights, so it would be nice to have a character focused on a completely different playstyle. Rapunz has something different, but it's more or less, well, yeah, it's identical to most. But with all that being said, what do you guys think about Bretonnia over the past 5 years? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our fame level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our king level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.